Securing an overseas donor. If you choose to go overseas to search and secure sperm, you need to consider these things. If you go to a developing country, there may not be any quality control about the sperm donor. Who you think may be the donor may, in fact, be someone else entirely. Depending on what country you do go to, neither you nor your child may ever know the identity of the donor. While that might not seem like an issue now, it will probably be a pretty big issue once the child starts asking where dad is. Don't assume that Australian laws apply overseas. They don't, except if you pay greater than reasonable expenses for the donor or buy sperm, which, because of what are called long-arm laws, might be an offence back home. In several Australian states, there are laws which stretch out overseas and grab you like a long arm, hence the reason they're called long-arm laws. And they extend to the jurisdiction of that state, so that inadvertently you still commit an offence punishable by up to 6 months or 15 years imprisonment by doing something overseas instead of at home. The law in this area is tricky, and it's important to get clear legal advice first before you go overseas. Depending on where you go overseas, you may be asked to sign or not sign a contract with the donor. Even if the donor is not recognised overseas as a parent, he may be recognised in Australia as a parent. When people travel around the world and subject themselves to the different legal systems of different countries, they engage in what is called private international law. The reality is that the laws of each country are different. Although someone might be seen overseas to be a parent, they may not be seen as one here, and vice versa. There's a classic example from a few years ago here in Australia, which was between Farnell and Chambua. It's also known as the baby gammy case. Now, what happened here was the law of Thailand and the law of Western Australia were different as to who was going to be the parent. So there were 6 parties before the court arguing about what law applied as to parentage. 5 of those parties said that the law of Western Australia applied, and 1 said the law of Thailand. And ultimately, the judge found that given that the child, Piper or Pippa, who was or is the sister of baby Gammy, was in Western Australia, then the law of Western Australia would be in play. And so therefore, WA's law as to who was the parent was applied, and not the law of Thailand.